Right, today, quite a few emergencies. Climate. I'm going to write it up here. Now, on this consultancy, number 2, we want your thoughts on what's happening. Not only with the amount of people that are now climate activists, etc., but also what you're thinking. Now, I'm going to start by, I've been around 60 years now. Say I started thinking about weather and things like that about 10 years old, we're talking about 50 years experience. Now, in the south of England, in Kent, we had a defined summer and a winter. There was nearly always snow before Christmas and definitely snow afterwards. We had to go and buy carloads of flour and stuff like that to make bread. We couldn't get out of our, okay, we lived in the country, but we basically couldn't get out of the end of our road. Most January, Februaries. And then in the summer, you'd have this summer where you would get burnt pretty much every summer. I'd get some sort of sunburn and would always be out in just a pair of shorts, you know. Now recently, all that's gone out the window. There seems to be a lot more wind and rain. As you can hear, we've got Storm Dennis. Good day to do this. You can hear all the roof panels fluttering in this warehouse. There's yeah, even the front, the shutters on the front of the door, which is sort of down there, I can hear that banging every now and again as well. You might hear it on this video. But we never had any of these strong winds or anything like that. Now, if you imagine the globe's heated up by 1%, which we definitely know it has. There's no ifs or buts there. We definitely know it has. Just say 1 degree, for instance. What's that going to do to the sea, the land, and the air? First of all, the sea is going to expand, because obviously heating up by 1%, it's going to get bigger. The land, heating up by 1%, is going to expand. So you'll get more volcanoes, more earthquakes, which is exactly what we've seen. Sea level rising due to sea expansion. Now, that'll be offset a bit by the fact that 1% will allow water to evaporate off the sea. So that water is up there somewhere. It can't escape the atmosphere. It's still up there. So basically, that has got to come down at some stage. And because there's more water in the air and more currents, air currents, things like that, you're going to get more wind. You'll get more rain, because it will be dropping, because the wind will be shifting it to different areas where there's, for instance, low pressure. So it will drop. And so, you know, there's so much involved in that 1%. That's without any other science. That's without us putting stuff into the air. CO2, people say, oh, CO2 is the big problem, but actually it's not. CO2 is, you know, we've had big levels of CO2 in the past, even when there wasn't an industrial revolution. But talking about industrial revolution, if you imagine every single fire that was lit every night in London to produce that smog is still up there somewhere. It might have come down as acid rain, but all that rubbish is still up there somewhere. And if you can imagine the last big extinction put a black line of carbon all around the world, in every rock face that's come up since then, that we can see this black line at exactly the same time as that was what happened the last time there was lots of rubbish in the atmosphere, either by Yellowstone, a meteorite strike. There's lots of things that can put junk up in the air. Krakatoa, there's quite a few. I mean, we even saw that little one in Iceland go off, and it stopped everything. It stopped all the air traffic, it blocked up vents, it blocked up filters, did all sorts. Can you imagine what a big one's going to do? So, and with the land expanding, you'll get all kinds of other things like that happening. So that's before any of the science. And I was going to say, in my 50 years watching the weather, it has changed just over 50 years. We just don't get a summer anymore as such. We might get the odd day's sun, but the rest of it is pouring rain or wind or something where you see farmers rushing about. When you get a couple of good days, you see all the tractors racing about doing the getting the silage in and stuff. Obviously it's got to be dry for the winter. So there's all that. Yeah, and okay, you might think some of the climate activists like Greta are trying to ring the alarm bells before the burglars got here. But if you think about it, absolute catastrophe or nothing, and we act, we stop this. But if that wasn't existing in the first place, we can only make the place better anyway. So whatever they say do, it's a good idea to do it, just in case there's going to be a catastrophe, which, some say, you imagine a point of no return, for instance. I'll give you one really simple example. You take ice out of a fridge, and it's going from -5 to +20, it's going to melt. If you take it out of -5 when it's ice, and put it up to 0.5 degree, it's still going to melt. So there will be a point when it gets a certain temperature that it's going to melt anyway. Whether it goes over or not, it could go 100 degrees over, that's still going to melt. It could go 0.001 of a degree, it's still going to start melting. Because we all know that ice starts melting over zero. So that's a simple example of a point of no return. But there's lots of them. For instance, 10 years ago, I'm not going to talk about the virus here, but because that's another consultancy I want to put up. But basically, I might do that today and next, because that's quite important as well, the coronavirus. Because I've heard some things this morning even, like from our own intelligence and from America, what's really going on, not what they're telling us, what's really going on. So I'll do that as number 3 sometime today and try and upload that tonight when I get home. So, climate change. I've seen it, lots of other people have seen it who are my age. We just don't get a year like we used to get 50 years ago. Now 50 years in the age of the Earth is next to nothing. It's really next to nothing. If it's happening that quick, then I think we really should do something about it. Okay, electric cars are coming. The oil industry still trying to build pipelines. They're going to be irrelevant. That one in America that they're all complaining about, that is going to be pointless in a couple of years' time. We haven't bought a new car because we're waiting for electric to come down. I like the idea, especially with the Teslas. And not only are they quicker than petrol cars, but they're getting to sort of 300, 400, 500 mile range as well now. So there really is no excuses. In fact, when I was a kid, I can remember seeing the milk float coming down the road, and used to run to the milkman, jump in it, and was amazed when he put his foot on the accelerator or the on button, the jolt he got back from the torque. Now I was always thinking, why don't they put that in the car? Instead of screaming the engine to try and get away quickly, all you got to do is put your foot on the accelerator. There's no gears, no clutch to burn out, you know, it does its own braking, and then you're generating while you're braking in the modern cars. Why didn't they do that 50 years ago? I couldn't understand that ever. And obviously when you get older you realise it's the oil companies making sure that doesn't happen, because they've invested so much money. All those big oil gantries you see, billions of dollars worth out in the North Sea, you know, they've invested in that, and there's shareholders. There's some of the shareholders are very, very rich people. Obviously, you know, the odd commoner has got shares, but not as many as the rich, and they need to keep rich. So they will do anything they can, any lobbying they can of oil companies, or any lobbying. You know, they used to buy out solar panel companies. British Petroleum, BP, actually started producing solar panels at one stage, but you don't hear about a BP solar panel, because they bought out a company especially to put the brakes on and subdue it. Okay, it kept running, but they never actually produced hardly any solar panels, not that I've seen. Okay, we get all the ones from China and Japan, but they're basically producing them because some of their occupants in their countries can't afford to buy oil for heating and things like that. So, but yeah, oil's definitely on the way out anyway, regardless of so that's one good thing. Now you're all saying, oh, but you still need a power plant to produce electricity to charge the cars. Well, yeah, that's dead right, but at least it's central and you can control the emissions with filters, etc. But you know, you've got it into one point where you can do something about it, rather than every single exhaust system in the country. And most of our cars, especially when there's a recession, aren't up to scratch anyway, so producing rubbish to put in the air the whole time. If you go to somewhere like Manila in the Philippines at rush hour, there's all these 125, 150cc bikes with a big cage on, a taxi actually, with a big cage on with hundreds of people in, and the poor bike struggling like mad. It's hardly burning any of its fuel because it can't. So what you smell is unburnt petrol vapour, and it gets in your eyes. That's the worst case of rush hour pollution that I've ever witnessed. And I don't know how many other countries are like that. I don't know. London, I worked and lived in London for a long time, and never had anything like that. Okay, you'd smell the odd exhaust, but it was always, I never even thought about it in London. So, climate change. Forget about the science, but obviously listen to it, you know, listen to who, but watch who the scientists, who they're being paid by. Are they independent? Are they really independent? Have they been put there by a government or somebody who's interested in oil? That's another thing you've got to watch. So if you're reading white papers and things from climate scientists, make sure you know who's paying them. That's another thing. So yes, any information, anything you can give us, the email address will be obviously the @ obviously that, put climate here, because we've got the whole domain. You can virtually put anything in the front. So climate projectx.org.uk, and tell us what you think, or if you're in, we've got our own intelligence people, mainly in Phineas information from most of the big organisations, but nothing to do with climate really. So we wouldn't mind knowing workers in laboratories, you know, etc., etc., including oil companies, what the oil company is going to do. really they should diversify into other things, you know, like biodiesel or that sort of thing. But yeah, anything that puts rubbish in the air should really be a no-no now, because not only will it affect us, there's lots more asthma now than there used to be. Even me, I have to take a inhaler in the morning. Never had to do that when I was a kid. Maybe it's old age, I don't know. It will affect eventually our food growing capabilities if it gets any worse. So think of that and think of what's going to cause that, etc. So basically you've got to you know, start to be mindful. Even, you know, if you don't believe it, just remember every single emission that ever left a car exhaust or the Industrial Revolution or anything is still here. It hasn't escaped the earth. It can't escape the earth. So it's still here somewhere. Just checking the time. 16 minutes. Yeah, so basically it's almost like filling your own back garden up with your own debris. You know, okay, yours gets taken away and ours gets taken away too, but if you can imagine whatever you throw away every week filling up your back garden, then you're going to realise what kind of waste we produce. It's a Christmas present from the boys at the warehouse. Strawberries and cream, Ballycastle. There you go. Very nice. I have one of those every now and again. But yeah, so these are all the things you've got to check up on. You know, don't believe anyone, obviously. Only believe yourself. Do your own research. Where do the scientists' papers come from? Who funds them? You know, you might get an oil company saying, oh, we're looking into global warming, but is that for their own benefit or for your benefit? You know, which? So there's that. There's a picture on my computer you might be able to see. It's a flooded car park with lots of Tesla car charging points. And I put on Facebook basically that it's probably the best picture for the sentence "too late." So, you know, that's another thing. But as you can hear, the wind outside, we've never had wind like this. This is probably the worst. We might get sort of, we've been here 15 years and you know, we're in the middle of England, so you don't get such bad winds as you do on the coast and things. Even in Wales, where I live there's you don't get as bad. But Milton Keynes is on a bit of a bump, especially if you go up the shopping centre when it's windy. That's like very, very busy. So yeah, that's what we've got for you today. So email that email address. You can put, I think we never disable comments because we like to hear them, good or bad. You can say that I sound boring if you like. A lot of other people have already. But if you listen, you know, you'll know, because our information comes from a lot of different places. So yeah. So that's it for today, and I shall do one on coronavirus, because we've got quite a bit of information that we should all know. Generally they get shut down because they call you a troublemaker, like the one I put on my Facebook page today, which is the Senate, or one of the big, like our Houses of Commons but in the United States or Canada, all the generals there for who are responsible for all the different countries, all saying what they intend to do for their part of the world when you know, if the virus strikes. And they're saying that obviously the west coast of Africa has got great quarantine facilities already, but the rest of Africa hasn't. So what's going to happen there? Anyway, I'll talk about that in the next video, which I'll try and put on at the same time as this one. Right, thanks a lot.